Good morning, good afternoon, or good day from wherever you are joining us. Welcome to this very, very important discussion about efforts to rebuild Ukraine. My name is Nadia McConnell. I'm president of the U.S.-Ukraine Foundation. We have several initiatives underway, and one is a new reconstituted task force. We have this initiative, which we call Friends of Ukraine Network. There's a National Security Task Force, which also somebody from Georgia Tech, General Phil Breedlove, is a part of. And we will be announcing in the next 10 days the reconstituted task force, the economic task force, and it's going to be 3 R's. It's reimagining, rebuilding, and recovery. We will be talking about principles and policies about how to approach this momentous task ahead of Ukraine. Part of the discussion that we are introducing into this overall focus on reconstruction and rebuilding is the role that communities can play, and also the opportunities that are presented with new technologies. And in this respect, I am very excited about our work with Georgia Tech, because they have been working hard on one of the major issues that is confronting the people of Ukraine. And that has to do with housing. Our strategy also is that recovery can begin even now because of the approaches through new technology. And I learned something from Frank, their professor, about that you can now think about reconstruction or recovery block by block. And that's because of the new technologies that are available to us. So we are very excited about the work that has been done by this class in the School of Construction at Georgia Tech. And so I will turn the mic over to Frank Wigstead, who is the professor at the School of Construction and who has been working with this class all semester on finding solutions for shelter in Ukraine. This could not be a more important topic, because so many people have been displaced. And one of the things that is daunting is where will they be, even before the shelling stops or after, where will they go? Most of the residential areas have been completely destroyed. And this is something that is touching every person of Ukraine. So Frank, thank you very much for all the work that you and your class have been doing. And I really look forward to this discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Nadia. It's been an honor to participate, and I appreciate you hosting us this morning. So what we've attempted to accomplish this semester is to create a framework of considerations when designing a home. There may or not be connected to municipal utilities, and further a framework to rebuild community after a crisis. May it be human cause, like an invasion of Ukraine, or an act of nature, like the recent earthquakes in Turkey. After building that framework, we found a solution for each category, as will be delivered by the project team or the class. I would stress that we found a solution for each category, not the solution. We based our suggested solution on that item or category's proximity to Ukraine and its availability at scale. So we've created something that's ready to go to fabrication wherever the need may present itself. As we proceed, I'd ask that you please add your questions or refer your questions to the chat box. And Mike Burke will field those questions after each section. And I'd like to hand it off to Charlene Ellis, a member of the class and our facilitator today. Thank you.
Thank you, Frank. Again, just to reiterate, we are excited to be part of the solution. This class had a main goal to provide a place that people can consider home, even if temporary. So you will see that our solution considers that firstly, and then within our respective sections, we will give you, like Frank said, one solution. So today I'm going to walk you through our introduction and agenda. I'm going to take us through meeting a Ukrainian young man who helped us develop a lot of the story. There's going to be an overview slide of recommended solution. Then my colleagues are going to take you through the block scale plan, wall assembly, water and sewer, energy use and production, heating, ventilation, and AC. And then Frank will round us out with the conclusion and references. So meet Vlad. Vlad is a 24-year-old Ukrainian. Vlad was actually traveling in Italy when the war broke out. So Vlad was able to not be there. However, his family, his grandmother and his father are still there. His father is now a soldier in the war. In speaking with Vlad, who is now here in Atlanta, Georgia, trying to work, trying to earn money, and eventually to hopefully to be an American traveling in Europe, there's always home base in the Ukraine. And so in speaking to Vlad, he helped us to really understand and frame what it is that is necessary and important to the people of Ukraine when we were coming up with a solution. Vlad's biggest concern is the kitchen. What are we going to do with the kitchen? For us, kitchen is go and cook, eat, leave. For Vlad and his family, the kitchen became the heartstone of the house. Not only because it is the place where they did cook, but is the place that really was the house. You will see shortly kind of a rendering of, based on some of the things that Vlad have told us, that it is an open space. That is the space that honestly the family spent a lot of time. And it's a lot of the times where Vlad also fell asleep. And so one of the things that's also important to Vlad is soft bench seating. One of the things that was really, really, really telling and speaking to Vlad was things that we consider luxuries here are very different in terms of Ukraine. And so it was very great to hear of the luxuries for Vlad and his family, like soft seat, bench seating in case he falls asleep there. And then winter food storage was important, as well as just making sure there's a large multi-purpose sink. Again, for us, a luxury is a washer and dryer. In the Ukraine, in the sink, and a lot of different third world countries, there are in the sink is where you wash clothes as well as eat and cook your food and wash. So feedback on the project itself, beyond the kitchen being the heartbeat of the house, individuality is less important. Vlad would get up and he would go outside when he wanted to be by himself. But most important is comfort and safety. And then there has to be a focus on utilitarianism and sustainability. So whatever we built, we knew it had to be useful and sustainable. So my colleagues are going to take you through each of the sections, but this is the solution. Something that's temp to perm, modular pre-built with wall panels, flexible and modular home systems, off-grid electricity, self-sustainable water management, pre-assembled utility, and multiple water collection methods for flexibility of location and season. So now my colleagues will take you through more detail, starting with Mr. Jeremy at Block Scale.
Yes, well, it's an honor to be with you today. As Charlene said, my name is Jeremy Ward. I'm a Master's of City Planning student at Georgia Tech, and I'll be taking you through the block scale plan today. As Frank has already said, we wanted to imagine what it would be like. We're presenting a template for a unit for Ukraine, but we wanted to imagine what it might be like to reconstruct neighborhoods, villages that might have been destroyed during this conflict, or might be new villages, to look at it from a more comprehensive viewpoint of not just the individual housing units, but what the community might look like, how it fits into the existing transportation networks, and some of the infrastructure that we'll walk you through in this presentation, including the existing development patterns and other recommendations like the micro combined heat and power. So as mentioned, these units are individual, they are self-sustaining, but there are some certain efficiencies from clustering that is important to keep in mind in order to make these units turn into something that is really both cost effective and effective in terms of the social value that they're providing to the residents of the Ukraine. Two of these efficiencies off the bat are the sense of community. Obviously, you can have a house, one of these units in the middle of a field somewhere, and that's one of the alternatives that we would like to present. One of the options that we would like the Ukrainians to have. But there are communal benefits for being in a village. This is the traditional pattern of human development and human growth. And there are benefits from infrastructure. It can be cheaper to run a larger energy wastewater system for multiple houses as opposed to just one. So we do recognize these efficiencies. One of the key takeaways that I have is, as far as the block scale plan that I would like to present to you, is that one of the optimal configurations, especially for smaller units, such as the one that we have, is for a small inward facing village, a pocket neighborhood. These types of developments are age old. This is kind of the core medieval village pattern in much of Europe. And it is making a resurgence across much of the world, certainly here in the United States, but there have also been pocket neighborhood developments built in urban areas, actually, in places as different as Haiti and Hungary, multiple parts of Africa as well, in the past year. So it is making a development resurgence. One of the key benefits of this pocket neighborhood configuration is the shared and protected space and the infrastructure in the center. You can see in this image on the left, there's the village green, as it were, which currently is open space in this picture, but could be used for infrastructure such as the micro combined heat and power system. It could be used for crops. And you'll notice how in this configuration, the houses are all looking inwards. So there is a very real sense of community that results from that. However, it's also important for us to consider the existing patterns of developments in Ukraine. And these are different based on if we're looking at an urban or rural area. This is important to recognize and to keep in mind. So one of the key rural patterns of development in Ukraine, kind of in the smaller villages, the outskirts, the agricultural regions of the country, which is much of the country, to be honest, is that most Ukrainian villages tend to group along the roadways. You can see in these two images taken from two different parts of Ukraine how the pattern is both exactly the same. You have the roads running through the village, you have the houses fronting the road, and then you do have some shared space in between the roads, most prominently on the village on the right, where you have 4 roads, and you can see very clearly how there's fields or gardens in that space in between the houses. So this does, in a way, mimic some of the qualities of pocket development that we talked about earlier, as far as having space in between the houses that can be viewed as more protected. But it is quite different in the sense that it's fronting the road, and it's can feel less secure, especially in the time of war or trouble. But this is something that our houses could do, is to follow this traditional pattern if that was desired on the ground. And it could also be slightly modified by putting a second row in between 2 roads, for instance, of units for people who maybe preferred privacy or who were worried about being right on a main road. There's warfare going on. And just to talk more about the pocket neighborhoods. So this is an image on the left from a new development just south of Atlanta that I think exemplifies the pocket neighborhood well. These units on the left are all between 500 and 900 square feet. So roughly in the size that we're looking at here, just in the American context. So this pocket neighborhood, we would recommend this for urban and suburban areas in Ukraine. And the beauty of it is it's very versatile. It can work well as infill within an urban environment that may need redevelopment or may have been destroyed, but it can also work as a new neighborhood within a rural area, and very instantly, based on the feedback we've gotten from residents living in these sorts of developments, you can live in it and feel like it's an old place, somewhere where there's safety, familiarity, and comfort, because of the configuration of it. It has the feelings of protection, the shared community space, garden infrastructure in the middle, and just the simple fact that you're looking at your neighbors. So there's always eyes on that central area. People are always looking out for your house. You're not isolated. And this is a very important consideration, especially considering the warfare happening in Ukraine and the the impact that takes upon people's feelings of community, their opportunity for community. And one of the other beauties of this configuration is that it does cluster units for efficiency. So it has them all nearby each other without putting them directly on top of each other or squeezing them together, but it does achieve that efficiency of space. And you can see that this does occur in various places within Ukraine. Currently, again, as I mentioned, it is not the most common pattern of development, but it can certainly be found, particularly in some of the more urban cities of Ukraine, some of the more medium to major cities. Although it's not common, it is present sporadically. You can see in these images that you see that shared space in the middle that is often used for trees, for groves of trees, for plots, for cultivating food, for gardens, which as the food system and supply in Ukraine has been dramatically disrupted, that cannot be overstated. Just providing a safe space, whether common or individual, for the cultivation of food nearby the home that is protected from the weather and protected from people trying to come in. And one other key consideration for the project is that these areas in the middle, the greens, as it were, these are safe areas for children to play. We are not just building these houses for single families of adults or an individual adult, but we want to acknowledge the reality that children, many children have been displaced, many families have been displaced, and may make use of these units. So these common areas under adult supervision are safe places for children to play. And finally, one other key acknowledgement is that many Ukrainian neighborhoods, pretty much around the country, feature fencing in front. This might be for privacy or for security, but if the Ukrainians on the ground would like to consider building a larger scale version of a neighborhood with our houses, with our units, it might be worth considering putting in a fence around the outside, because that does seem to be a priority for many Ukrainians. And before I hand it over to Derek with Wall Assembly, I would like to pause for a minute and ask if there are any questions about my section.
Okay, sorry. I told you I'm challenged with using chat, so I'll just ask questions. I want to say that's you've really noticed, I think, some important things about how Ukrainians like to live. And the whole idea of being able to have gardens for food production. I mean, this is very much, in the tradition. People who live in large cities, they all have dachas that they go to in the summer, primarily so that they can grow their, fruits and vegetables. So I think having that availability, I think, is really, really important. And so glad that it's, part of your plan.
I appreciate that. I agree with you. And this has been a priority for people in war-torn areas all over the world. That's a fundamental requirement for human life. And we take it for granted here in America, but just the ability, the possibility for families to grow their own food and at least rely on that. That's a very important tool and a very important psychological feature that can make them feel at home and secure in their new home.
And the other thing that I think we've discussed previously, there seems to be a resurgence of people going back to the villages as opposed to what we saw, in the decades, because people were going to urban areas for jobs. But now, because of safety issues and the others, there's a resurgence of people wanting to go back to the village. So I think this would be very attractive. Thank you very much.
Yes, ma'am. And I will add, the beauty of the pocket neighborhood model, as I mentioned, is that it is very versatile with regards to urban and rural. It can be used as infill within an urban street, or you can have the exact same template, 8 to 10 houses that may have been tried in an urban area and put it in a rural area, and it can be just as good there. All right.
All right.
We'll pass it along to Derek with Wall Assembly. Thank you.
Hey, everybody. I'm Derek Dahl. I'm a master's student at Georgia Tech for real estate development. I had the privilege of working on a solution for wall assembly. We were unable to find a solution that was already on the market for this solution. So I designed a possible solution for a house that can be assembled and flat packed on the back of a truck for transportation, so it can be delivered almost kind of like an IKEA house, if you will. So our key goals while developing this design was something that could be set up quickly and taken down quickly without special tools, to make it so that it was modular, so that it can be expanded for size. So for bigger families, you can have 1, 2, 3 sections. All the panels are designed to be pre-built, so they're delivered basically ready to assemble. There are some future-proof options built in, and the system is designed to be reusable. So if it's put up for an emergency housing situation, it can be disassembled and relocated. So also, if you notice, there's a link on the bottom of this slide. At that link, you can actually go and look at the 3D model as it is, and you can kind of play with it in there. I would like to note this is also a copyleft design. Copyleft just means that it's available for anyone to use to play with and modify themselves, because the whole point of this is to share ideas. So the assembly and materials, it's going to be wood frame. There's going to be 2 layers of polystyrene foam boards. Between the foam boards and the siding and the interior panels, we're expecting an R value of about 35 to 39 to help combat the really cold winters they have in Ukraine. The exterior is going to be a polycarbonate quick snap panels that allows for really easy assembly, and the interior is going to have some PVC slat walls, which will give people the ability to hang things. That will be covering the entire interior of the system. The double insulation really helps not just with insulation, but the way that they're going to stick together on the outside with a tape will also seal it. So it'll be a very tight envelope, which will help for a lot of efficiencies in terms of keeping the heat in. And yeah, the sizing of all of these panels were designed so that they could easily fit on the back of a truck. So for delivery's sake and for moving, makes it a lot easier. So as you can see on the left, the way it's going to be shipped is going to be 2 panels. So you can put the panels together and then put the insulation panels inside, and it'll all attach like that. The key also was for scalability. So with this system, these panels can be pre-built in factories or with manufacturers in mass, essentially. And because the whole system uses the same panel essentially for the floors, the walls, the roof, the ceilings, you can just mass produce these panels out, and it just makes the flow a lot more efficient. So the overall dimensions, we're saying the standard would be about 2 units, which will be 24 square meters on the main floor, giving you about a 3-meter high ceiling. It's actually a pretty high ceiling in there. One of the key things that Vlad had mentioned was that they usually have a deck or a patio or a balcony where they would store all their tools and stuff. He said the deck was basically his garage. So I wanted to make sure we incorporated some kind of deck so that they were somewhere to have, an outdoor area without standing on the dirt. So the deck is it's about 2 meters wide by 6 meters. So it actually gives you a pretty decent amount of space on the outside. And there's also a loft area that gives you about 12 meters of usable space. Or 12 square meters, I'm sorry. So the overall usable space for a double unit would be about 36 square meters. So this is a quick mock-up of the interior we were expecting. There's a ladder that's going to be assembled, or I'm sorry, installed. That'll give you access to the loft space, which we'll have for additional storage or bed space. The height is about 220 centimeters in the loft, which is tall enough for somebody to stand. It's about around 7 feet. The enclosed bathroom gives you some privacy as well. And those panels for the walls are the same panels as the roof as well, and roof walls and floor. The sink and the shower were located right next to each other to reduce materials needed for water supply and drainage. And the slat walls, like as you can see, are going to be surrounding the entire interior for hanging storage, as well as we had discussed a hydroponic wall possibility, which I know in the winters, and it's going to be hard to grow anything outside. So giving them the flexibility of having somewhere to grow something inside would be pretty useful, we think, and also make the place feel a lot more lively and green. So we're talking about, as you will hear later on in this presentation, for all the systems that we're going to be suggesting for solutions, having an accessory building or a utility building. This building will house things like the MCHP system for power and heat, for water heating. It'll also hold things like water storage and any other utilities like, batteries, or they'll discuss the power option later on with Nick and them. But the accessory building will use the same design essentially as everything else. So that way you can kind of make it bigger or smaller depending on if you're planning on doing a full block's worth of utilities or just a couple units. So before I pass you off to Jennifer, Art, and Kelson with water and sewer, does anyone have any questions for wall assembly?
This is Mike Burek. I just wanted to point out that there was one comment to the last presentation. Peter mentioned to everyone, with the trauma of war growing, growing food can also be very emotionally healing.
Yes. Yeah, I agree. And having that inside, I think, would be a much better feel and make it feel a lot more homey rather than kind of sitting in a box.
Derek,
Yes.
I had just one question. What was the thought on the polystyrene versus polyiso insulation, or something a little denser and higher performance?
It was more for the rigidity, I believe, and just getting basically pre-made rigid panels, because the panels on the exterior are basically a structural component, if you will. So that's kind of why I went in that route.
They look great. It might be helpful just to do an example of how they can be reconfigured into almost anything else afterwards, how they can be incorporated into multifamily, or how the reuse doesn't require that they go back together into that same relief housing configuration.
Right. Yeah, that's a great point. If you can tell, like from the deck, the way that if you could go to the slide with the dimensions, you can kind of see it better. So the way that the deck is, those panels come out. So you could actually expand the house out to the full length of the deck if you needed to, and remove the deck. And then the panel should still attach within that overall dimension. So yeah, there's a lot of modularity to it so that they can, go a little wider and a little longer.
Eric, this is Peter Michelson. Quick question about the the siding on these units.
Mhm.
So the images, it looks like some kind of a lap siding.
Yes.
Is that a fiber cement siding that goes over? And
No, it is a, if you go back to the material slide. Yeah, right there. It is a polycarbonate, basically a plastic. And you can kind of see that one picture on the bottom that shows the exterior, how they snap together.
oh, so those, okay, I thought those were a vertical alignment. That's a horizontal alignment.
Yes.
They snap together.
Mhm.
And another intent of the wall panels that Derek designed are that they could be assembled by non-skilled labor. So we thought it was important to create a wall assembly, or Derek, designed a wall assembly that could be assembled. So the panels go together quite easily. The siding snaps together quite easily. So it's really meant to be sort of a Lego approach.
Mhm.
So that image up there, Frank, that's like a through bolt that connects panel to panel.
Yes. Yeah, so there'll be about 4 bolts per side of each panel. And then 3 on the bottom and 3 on the top.
So just IKEA tools puts it together.
Yep, basically you could do the entire house with just a drill and a couple of wrenches.
Looks like you've got a very interesting eave detail. Also, I think in one of the other pictures, it looked like there was some kind of gutter system that is incorporated.
Yes, there's a gutter system for water collection. If I believe it's on the first slide. Yeah, you can kind of see the gutter system goes along the side and meets in the middle on. So the options that will be discussed by Jennifer and her team for water collection will kind of cover where that will end up going. So it'll either end up in a system that's going to be stored there or in one of the accessory buildings.
Would those gutters interfere with ice and snow sliding off in the winter, or I guess you could put some gutter guards on them or something like that?
They're actually going to discuss a possible solution for that as well later on. But I believe there's some heating system for the roof.
The cool eave detail, I like that.
Derek, what's the plan for windows?
Currently, we kind of avoided the window approach for now, just in terms of doing it as quick as possible and having as tight of an envelope as possible. But because it is just essentially rigid rigid foam, it would be very simple to kind of just cut through that and add windows as needed.
Yeah, our primary goal, Peter, was heating.
Mhm.
And in the unit that could, while serve temporary purposes, evolve as the structure. So it could be disassembled and removed, or it could be windows could be added. It could be clad. It could be cladded with brick or stone later. So it serves its purpose and would do so for many years, or it could serve as temporary housing. So the concept is temporary to perm, and that's why we had that sort of how would these assemble in terms of community as well.
Yeah. And for the layman who's assembling it, adding windows is a pretty complex install to make sure that the water runs the right way and that there is no leakage. So we're kind of trying to foolproof it.
So let me just, I guess, maybe challenge you all. I think windows, that needs to be considered because people have been living in shelters in the dark. And I don't know, I think psychologically, I think it would be important for people to have some windows. So, whatever you're saying, it can be done. Obviously, it's more complicated, but I would encourage that being explained or, shown how to be done.
Yeah, it can definitely be done and added on to it. If anything, we could even maybe design a panel that has a window already installed.
Yes.
And have the panel sent already pre-built with the window. But one thing that kind of helps with that is there's going to be a really good lighting system in this, which will also be discussed. And also, if they did, go with the hydroponic route, that would also have a lighting system and some kind of outdoor indoor feel. All right, so I'm going to pass you guys off to Jennifer, Arthur, and Kelsey.
Thank you, Derek. My name is Jennifer Butler. I am a student in the Master Real Estate Development Program at Georgia Tech.
And my name is Arthur Baker, and I'm in the MRED program also at Georgia Tech.
And my name is Kelson Tucker. I am also in the MRED program at Georgia Tech in my second year.
Okay, hello. It's an honor and a pleasure to be with you here today. And I would like to get us started off discussing our vision and goals for our water and sewer system that we've put together. So our vision was to create a system that would be practical and easy to install in any location in Ukraine. We had to be considerate of the weather climate of Ukraine, which can have freezing temperatures depending on the season. So we wanted to be certain that we came up with ideas that would allow for freeze prevention of our water system. We also wanted to be able to reasonably serve up to 6 occupants with water in each of the homes. And we wanted to make the system adaptable for community expansion. So with our goal in mind, we decided that if a municipal water source isn't readily available to be tapped into, that we would use a dual collection method, which would consist of collecting rainwater and also an option for sourcing well water. And having at least these 2 options, it would allow for independence of location. We also wanted to suggest using plumbing, supply, and drain lines that would be easy to assemble. And we also wanted to utilize a point of delivery tankless water heater that would provide convenient hot water. And now Jennifer will take us on to the next part of our presentation.
Thank you, Art. As we all know, water is a precious resource that is vital for human survival. Water is especially vital for the survival and prosperity of the people of Ukraine. The ideal scenario would be to connect the cabin unit to a clean municipal water source, as Art mentioned. Our dual hybrid collection method seeks to take advantage of natural resources in a sustainable way for both the individual cabin units and the community at large, with or without the availability of a clean municipal water source. We focused on creating a temporary to permanent solution for those who are fleeing the war. In our research, we learned that Ukraine is abundant in river basins, so we decided that groundwater should be an important component of our water supply solution. We sought to find potential partnerships with subject matter experts, manufacturers, and wholesalers, preferably in the region, for central assembly of the cabin unit, flat packed, like Derek mentioned, and crated for site delivery. So our first goal was to look at the groundwater. We developed a well system using an auger for the well in partnership with the emergency water well. We looked at a deep well electric pump from a wholesaler that is out of or has a warehouse in Poland, Vivor. And then we just, as Art mentioned, a quick supply connection to the pre-assembled plumbing wall to make it easy for those who are fleeing the war and installing this cabin unit. In our solution, groundwater will supply water to the cabin unit for drinking, hygiene, cooking, washing dishes, and clothing. So we want to provide a way for the cabin inhabitants to both test and clean their groundwater within the cabin unit should the test kit prove that there are some issues with it. So we looked at this test kit for water quality that could be included in that flat pack. And then these tablets for cleaning from Aquatabs with a delivery system that would fit within the piping in the unit. Even though groundwater is a valuable and abundant resource in Ukraine, we wanted our solution to take it a step further. Collecting rainwater is becoming an increasingly popular practice among individuals and communities worldwide. For our solution, we wanted to take advantage of the year-round precipitation of rain and snow in Ukraine to supply additional water to the cabin units in the community. Rainwater harvesting involves collecting, storing, and using rainwater for a variety of purposes. We focused on collecting rainwater and snow water for use in gardens and fruit crops, crucial to the survival of its inhabitants. Our rain collection system includes a roof gutter system, which is pictured on the right. And then there's another picture there of the cabin unit with the gutters that was mentioned earlier. And then we included a collapsible storage tank so that it could be easily folded up and sent in the flat pack to Ukraine for then opening it and using it to collect that rainwater. By diverting the rainwater, by diverting and collecting the rainwater from the roof structure and redirecting it to that storage tank or the gardens, we incidentally reduce the risk of surface water flooding and prevent soil erosion around the cabin unit so that Derek's foundation doesn't fail. And the gutters will reduce the volume and velocity of the storm runoff, but how to keep that water flowing? Ukraine experiences long, cold winters where temperatures often drop below freezing. Freezing temperatures can cause water to freeze, which could lead to burst pipes, damage to the water system or the cabin unit, and interruptions to the water supply. So in our solution, we proposed insulation for the piping, a heating cable on the roof around the pipes, which will melt snow and ice to keep those gutters flowing. That heating cable works down to 20 degrees below 0 Celsius. And it would also protect the roof structure, the wall assembly, from the weight of the snow and the ice, and keep the water supply free flowing to the hydroponic wall in the winter. We also propose these ground thawing blankets from Pullman Electro Heat in Poland, which would enable, for ease of installation, should this crate be shipped in a cold month, they can put that down to help with the well digging. And then it can also be left there for overall ground system protection. We also have a tankless water heater, as mentioned, in the unit, near the shower and the kitchen sink. We also are proposing a recirculating pump to keep the water moving, and again, recycling through that hydroponic wall. The other option, shy of a municipal water source or using these options, is that in a collected building unit, and we have a community-centric heating system like the micro combined heat and power. Thank you. That has a buffer tank that will also use the excess thermal energy to heat the water, where it can be pumped back to the units without freezing. By taking these steps, we hope to protect the roof from the weight of the snow, ensure year-round water supply, and prevent water from freezing, and ensure a reliable water supply, even during the coldest months of the year in Ukraine. I'm going to pass it back to Art now, who will summarize our system and discuss additional suppliers for the cabin unit. Thank you.
Yes. As far as water distribution, the plumbing system will have the capacity to collect fresh water for storage for immediate and future use. And the plumbing lines, they will run strategically in between the kitchen and bathroom wall, which places it, between two spaces inside of the dwelling that's in need of the water. And we also are suggesting that the gray water that runs from the drain lines can be used for garden irrigation. Now I'd like to go into some of the suppliers that we have found through our research. We selected several vendors that could possibly supply materials that are located in the vicinity of Ukraine. TNT, which is located in Ukraine, can be a source for plumbing lines and plumbing materials. There's another company by the name of Daffy, which is located in Poland, and they can supply the point of delivery tankless water heater. Amfi, which is in Latvia, can be a source to supply the prefabricated shower floor, which has an integrated drain, which you can see in the picture. That floor system we were suggesting to use in the bathroom in the shower. We also have another source, the washing machine project. They could supply the hand or manually used washing machine, and they can be located online. They ship worldwide. And these are some of the suppliers that we found, researched, and came up with to present to you today. And now Kelson will take us forward into his sewer system.
Thanks, Art. So as said earlier, ideally, we would like to connect to local utilities and sewer. In that case, we would just run a small electric pump to pump out all the waste. However, for an off-grid community such as this, we've come up with the plan to use these small electric toilets. They're 16 inches wide by 20 inches deep. And our goal here was to make sure that we could discard the waste in an efficient and safe manner, keep up with the volume waste produced by 4 to 6 people, and be able to adapt to demand. These units are easily installed. They are able to ship in containers such as the other products that you've seen before. This product in particular is called the Laveo Dry Flush Toilet. It is one of the top selling off-grid dry flush toilets in the United States. The wastewater is emptied into a bag that can collect up to 30 of the flushes, and that is both dry and liquid waste. And then these bags can be easily disposed of off-site, as well as brought in very cheap and innumerable ways. And the toilet you see in front of you, it can be either wall mounted or a standalone unit. It is a 12-volt unit that requires no electricity when not plugged in. It is capable of 300 flushes on a single charge. So even if the grid does go down and we lose all power, you will still be able to go to the restroom. And there are no liquid chemicals used in this way, so that we make sure that it's all safe and non-toxic. And next, I will be talking about gray water disposal. So for the winter months, we've already talked about using a hydroponic farm inside, but then also our wastewater for the sink will be disposed of through a wastewater pipe that will be about 3 feet deep. That is the frost level. That is the average frost level that goes across all Ukraine. And what that means is that the soil for those cold months will freeze down to a depth of 3 feet. So that means that our wastewater pipe will need to be at least 3 feet deep to ensure that no wastewater freezes on its way down to the predetermined collection site. But however, in the summer months, when it is warmer outside, we would like to use a drip water irrigation garden. So what that will do is, for the warmer months when it's not freezing outside, you will simply turn the handle on our system to enable the water from the sink to flow out into the drip irrigation lines. And the water will be not purified, but it will be diluted and cured through an inert process of sand and gravel to get rid of any organic particulates that might be in the water from cleaning in the sink. And this is a safe, easy, and green way to have a garden very easily. And now, before we move on to Jared and Nick for energy use, I'd like to go ahead and field some questions for me, Jennifer, and Art.
Kelson, do you have any concerns about any chemicals used in the water as far as using it for irrigation purposes? Definitely, you're filtering out particulates, but what about any chemicals in the water?
Yes, so if there are chemicals present, an easy way of solving this is using something like a black charcoal inert, not an active purifying agent. Something like you would see in a life straw that uses black charcoal as a way to get rid of the chemicals so that when the water is deposited into our garden, it is free of those presumably dish washing cleaning agents.
So that's something that gets installed after after their particulate matter is strained out.
Mhm.
So it has to be accessible for being changed
Yes.
out. Yeah.
Hello, everyone. I'm Jared Capola, and I will be speaking on energy use. I am in the Masters of Real Estate Development program at Georgia Tech.
Hi, everyone. I'm Nick Kapamachia. I'm also in the MRED program at Georgia Tech in my second year. I'll be speaking on energy production.
So for energy use, our main focus was to present options that are portable, rechargeable, and can be charged in a variety of ways. For lighting, we believe products that use LED lights are best to use due to their long lifespan, energy efficiency, how well they operate in cold weather, and their dimming capabilities. The options you see here on the slide are just suggestions of different lighting options. The one on the top left is pretty unique in the way that it acts as a power bank, and you can charge small household items off of. The one on the bottom left is unique in the sense that you can hang it in a variety of different ways, whether it's bracket, hook, through a nail, or magnetic. And then the lantern option that you see here on the screen can be charged through solar. It takes batteries, USB, car adapter, or a hand crank. The next lighting options that I wanted to share are all manufactured and distributed by a company called D-Light. D-Light is an international company that focuses specifically on providing solar powered lighting and power products that are reliable and affordable. They have interior, exterior, and handheld lighting options that last anywhere from 8 to 12 hours on a full charge. The example you see at the top of the slide is a solar-powered home system that can power multiple appliances, accessories, mobile phones, and lights after just a single day of charge. The one on the bottom right of the screen is just a standard handheld flashlight, mostly used for outdoors. And then the one on the bottom left, the egg-shaped light, is something that you use more to set on a table, and it provides 360 degrees of lighting. And then the next lighting options, this is manufactured by a company called Colite Technologies that mostly provides off-grid lighting for walkway, roadway, and parking lots powered by renewable energy. As you can see in the photo on the slide, the light can be powered by both a wind turbine and solar panel. There's a lithium battery in the base of the light that captures the energy from the wind turbine and solar panel. All you need to do to install these is just to dig a hole in the ground deep enough to stabilize the pole. And the poles, they come in both a 12 and 30-foot height option, and they are motion censored to help with energy use. And then the last part of energy use that I'd like to talk about is refrigerator and freezer options. Again, we wanted to find something that was portable, that was dual zone, that had both, meaning a zone that, you know, could cool to refrigerator temperatures and a zone that could cool to freezing temperatures, and that come in a variety of different storage capacity options depending on how many people are living in each home. The options you see here on the slide come in different size options from 40 to 90 liter storage capacity. The white option you see here on the screen is powered by propane only, and the other two you can charge from car, truck, or standard wall socket, or like a power bank. All these options are weatherproof and they're very durable, so you can leave them inside or outside the house, and they cool anywhere from -18 to 10 degrees Celsius. Now I'll hand it over to Nick to speak about energy production.
Thanks, Jared. It was extremely fulfilling to be a part of this solution, and I echo all my colleagues in hoping our small contribution makes an impact on the ground in Ukraine. So looking a little bit more closely at energy production and producing energy to power these homes, our goal really is flexibility and adaptability based on location, and that's really spanning the spectrum from rural to suburban to urban. Our goal is for fuel and energy to be readily available, so malleability is key. We understand that geographic deployment creates a spectrum of possible needs, and sustainability is ideal, but petroleum-derived products are often available on the ground. So kind of digging into the possible solutions that we kind of considered, micro-combined heat and power systems are a suggested long-term solution. Solar panels work really well for individual units in the short term. Wind does have a track record of success in Ukraine, but it's not always readily available, and it requires battery storage. Generators are obviously one of the primary uses on the ground today. Not going to touch on that too much because I think it's pretty well covered technology. But our overall goal is to provide 2 to 2.5 kilowatts of energy per unit, which should be ample for the 24 square meter units. So kind of picking up on feedback from Nadia and Scott on our first presentation, we wanted to ask, is the centralized grid truly the long-term answer considering the potential for long-lasting conflict and the goal of rebuilding deeper energy resiliency in Ukraine, or is kind of a distributed district-focused application more in line with long-term goals for permanent impact to the way energy is produced in Ukraine? And we believe so. So via cogeneration, these units kind of strike two birds with one stone by leveraging the heat produced in the creation of electricity to heat water and even spaces. Via the accessory dwelling that Derek actually mentioned earlier, and with a well thought out planned layout of housing, as Jeremy touched on, the heat generated can be distributed hyperlocally via insulated ductwork. This MCHP can kind of function off a number of different fuels that includes biofuels, natural gas and propane, kerosene, and a number of other uses as well. So kind of looking in more detail at this technology and how it works and comparing it to a centralized grid, we want to emphasize that this is a well understood technology that has been used for 40 plus years, and the machines have an extremely extended lifespan. So actually kind of looking locally here in Atlanta, larger versions of this technology are used at one of the largest urban brownfield redevelopments in the nation. That's Atlantic Station. It's about 140 acres, 5,000 residences, and 6 million and a total of about 6 million square foot of development. They kind of created their own energy district, and it's viewed as sustainable due to the reduced carbon footprint and cost to run and maintain. And again, we want to continue to emphasize that technology is understood and used in applications globally, as well as within Ukraine. Looking to slide left, you can kind of see that conventional power is only about 30 to 40% efficient due to the average distance of transmission. So there's a large spread there that exists to implement a more efficient source of power in fuel supply pipe constrained environments. If your energy source is under attack, efficiency is crucial, and you need to maximize what you're able to get your hands on. So kind of looking down a little bit, or in the middle of the slide left there, you can see that due to its district energy implementation, CHP is about 90% efficient. You're not losing energy in transmission to homes that are miles and miles away. And the MCHP distributes energy locally, or it could even go back to the grid if the grid exists or if it's desired. But via a heat exchanger, it leverages excess heat to heat water for use, or the heat can be fanned into spaces. An example that we actually covered in a class presentation from an MCHP manufacturer shows that the heat coming off their hot water coils is close to 66 degrees Celsius. That's about 150 degrees Fahrenheit. And it's then blown by a fan where it cools to about 38 degrees Celsius, 100 degrees Fahrenheit within the duct system, and is passed to spaces or rooms. So just looking at accessibility, Ukraine's actually already invested in this technology in certain regions. There's a total of 6.1 gigawatts in capacity installed. It looks like about at least 50% of that has actually been destroyed in the past 2 years. And in 2021, the CHP represented about 5.5% of power generated in all of Ukraine. Mykolaiv, it's a strategic city on the Black Sea that was invaded and later retaken, has a combined heat and power plant that actually produces heat to the local citizenry. It supplies electricity that's co-produced with this heat, and also it provides wholesale electricity to the entire market of Ukraine. Right now, or prior to the invasion, it serviced about 40,000 citizens in a city of about 500,000. So you can see there's significant capacity to expand this technology within Ukraine, and there's likely already interest. Great thing about this is MCHP systems can be delivered within continental Europe, and Netherlands is an industry leader. Spain has a few companies that focus on this technology, so it can be delivered over land quite easily. Each unit at the micro level is about the size of a very large refrigerator or very large deep freezer and weighs about 800 pounds. And kind of bringing it back to the economic side, the cost and impact, essentially, a 60 kilowatt machine, which is what we are looking at for a 25 to 30 unit village, comes in at a cost of about 120 to 150,000 US. That's 4.5 to 5.5 million in local currency. And it comes out to about 73,000 to 91,000 per kilowatt in the local currency as well. It's got a useful life of 50 to 80,000 hours. That's somewhere between 5 and 10 years. There's numerous studies on the technology that kind of show its efficiency actually saves money in the long term. And there's a number of studies that show that there's a payback time period of 3 to 5 years. And that's via reduced fuel consumption and just efficiency on return of fuel use. And going back to the accessory dwelling that we mentioned earlier, the 60 kilowatt turbine can be housed in a utility building that can heat nearby shelters via insulated ductwork, depending on the layout of the village. So that's really our general suggestion when it comes to thinking long-term and thinking permanent, and also thinking of a larger implementation. But thinking a little bit more about some of the other sustainable solutions I mentioned on slide 1. Solar is feasible, and there is some significant installed capacity in Ukraine, but there is geographic variation in its effectiveness, and obviously it requires batteries and storage. Wind is really geared more towards a long-term static use, and when you're thinking about it from a temporary to a permanent perspective, wind turbines really don't hit the goal. There is a local Ukrainian firm, Ecotechnic, that produces 2.5 to 6 kilowatt solar systems, and that includes a battery as well as the panels. Jackery, which is one of the most well-known off-grid battery systems, has solar attachments, and its battery system is considered quite unique and strong, is available in Ukraine and sold in Ukraine. And again, wind systems are really less reliable on a large scale, and taking on a large wind infrastructure for 30 or 100 units doesn't make a ton of sense. So looking at the Ukrainian Minister of Energy, he said that they've lost about 90% of wind and 45 to 50% of their solar. And he also made the point that the larger sustainable sites are easily identifiable and targeted. And green energy is probably the most affected sector within Ukraine. And also that's because most of those capacities are in the south of Ukraine, where it's a little sunnier, where it's a little bit windier off the sea, and they're easily targeted. So kind of just looking at a apples to apples cost comparison, MCHP is about double the cost of solar overall. It's 2,000, as I mentioned earlier, about 2,000 USD per kilowatt installed, but it is portable, has an extremely long life, and there's no need for batteries. Heat is a byproduct, so you're not using your fuel to actually heat, but it does produce enough electricity to run a mini split system or any other type of accessory heating. Again, when it comes to an individual unit, we do recommend a 2.2 kilowatt Jackery system. You can see on the bottom left-hand side of the screen there, it is available for purchase in Ukraine. It comes with 6 panels, about 90,000 in the local currency, and one system will definitely power an individual unit. Battery lifespan is only about 2 to 3 years. So when you're thinking about going from temporary to permanent, you'll need to replace that battery, which is about a little over half the overall cost of the system. Dual fuel generators are well understood and are constantly being donated to Ukraine. And again, the Jackery battery is probably the best solution as well. So just looking at solar versus MCHP per 25 home village, solar about 62,500 USD, geared more towards short-term crisis use. MCHP is going to be about double that, but the focus there is obviously that this has a 10-year lifespan, can be put on the back of a pickup truck and relocated or even added to going forward when it comes to creating larger villages or larger districts, larger energy districts for power. Thank you guys. I'm going to hand it over to Marwan and Nandini for heating, ventilation, and air. But before that, are there any questions on energy use or energy production?
Yeah, I have a question. You are talking about wind. Traditionally there were a lot of villages where there were windmills for individual, I guess, homes. Is that not an option?
The issue with wind is the wind has to be blowing, and it also requires a pretty robust storage system. So your costs really start to go up when you look at actually buying the battery and installing the wind system and maintaining the wind system. So long-term and short-term, we felt that solar was definitely the way to go. And then long-term, the MCHP solution really provided a lot more bang for your buck in terms of utilizing fuel.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Hello, guys. This is Nandini Dave. I'm a Masters of Architecture student at Georgia Tech, and along with my colleague Marwan, we're going to talk about heating, ventilation, and air conditioning today.
Hello, everyone. Thanks so much for your time and the opportunity. We really appreciate to offer us that we can have this great impact with our project. My name is Marwan Shagar, and I'm in Master of Building Construction. Me and Nandini will discuss HVAC system solution for this project. Our vision is to offer 3 different solutions, 2 solutions for different scenarios for our project, and the third solution is to offer a new technology which can Ukraine take advantage of while rebuilding their infrastructure. In the case of using our project as a temporary solution, we wanted to give you the freedom to build this project anywhere in Ukraine. So we designed our solution based on the worst case scenario, which means not having an access to the power grid. In this case, having a full HVAC solution will be difficult because HVAC system consumes the majority of the power generated, and we will depend on our own power because this will be off grid. We decided to have our HVAC system be running separate from the power generated. To do so, we need to understand the importance and necessity of each system in the HVAC. Because of that, we decided to drop the AC part because we consider it as a luxury, and we will keep the HV, which is heating and ventilation, which are necessity. People can die without heating in the extreme cold weather condition. In the case of using our project as a permanent solution, we won't have this kind of issue. Our project will be connected to the power grid. So in this case, we offered a full HVAC solution. Regarding the new technology, we thought it would be great to share with you a new idea which can help to increase the efficiency of your power grid system and can be easily implemented while rebuilding Ukraine. As you can see, the most common thing between all our solution is heating because of the location of the project. Nandini will discuss in the following slide why we thought that heating is very essential for this project.
So as Marwan talked about, we're focusing on heating for off-grid solutions. And when we're not in touch with electricity, we're going to use biomass fuel. So let's talk about why heating is important for Ukraine. The first will be winter climate, because Ukraine experiences such cold winters with temperatures that drop below freezing. Without proper heating sources, people will be exposed to the harsh weather. The second will be energy dependency. Because Ukraine heavily relies on energy imports from Russia, which creates significant risk. Developing domestic heating sources becomes extremely important because this would reduce Ukraine's dependence on Russian energy and enhance the energy security. We have economic development that is related to heating importance, because developing the domestic heating sources will reduce the energy costs for Ukrainians. The fourth will be environmental concerns, because Ukraine's reliance on fossil fuels for heating creates significant environmental concerns. Developing alternative heating sources will promote sustainable development. So as you can see from this map on the image on the right, there are a lot of internally displaced people that are in need of heating in Ukraine currently.
So to get a good estimation for the required heating load, we need to consider the following. First, we need to identify all the factors which have an effect on our required heating load. You can see this factor on the image on the right. Second, we need to know what is the right standard, which can be used for our calculation. We know that Ukraine has its own standard for heating load estimations, but we couldn't find any of these standards in English version. So we decided to use our own American standard, which called ASHRAE. So we provided a link for the Excel file, which was created and used for this project. This Excel file can be used as a calculator for the heating load. Please feel free to use it and update it with the most accurate value. Because of the many unknowns we have for this project, you will find many assumptions have been made in the calculations, and we provide the reasonable explanation for each assumption in this Excel sheet. One of this assumption was the location of the project. We assume, just for the sake of the calculations, that the project will be in Western Ukraine in Lviv. Please don't misunderstand our assumption. We are not limiting our project to be in Lviv or even in Western Ukraine. Our project can be built in any part of Ukraine. Based on our calculations and assumption, we found that the maximum heat load which would be required to heat our project in the worst winter condition is around 5 kilowatts. Then Dini will discuss the following in the following slides, our proposed solution to efficiently provide the desired heating loads.
So as we are going into biomass fuel, we decided to look into pellet stoves as well as wooden stoves. So we're trying to actually research about what exactly is the difference between these two. So basically, a wood stove burns wood logs, which are readily available in Ukraine and can be really inexpensive. But there are some disadvantages to the same, which is burning wood can release pollutants in the air and negatively impact the air quality, as well as the availability of trees for this kind of a firewood, which can be done in an unsustainable manner if not regulated. The second is the pellet stove. Pellet stove is basically a stove that burns compressed wood pellets. These are basically made from sawdust and other wood waste products. Pellets are typically more expensive than firewood, but they burn more efficiently and produce fewer harmful emissions. But pellets, however, are a renewable resource, but the availability in terms of Ukraine is limited. So for energy source, wood stoves do not require any electricity to operate. while pellet stoves do, which makes wood stove an ideal backup heating source and thus can be preferred in areas with less access to electricity. So for the wood stove, we looked into a company called Stove Fitters. It is based in the UK. And one of the wood stoves that is provided by them actually has an option of keeping a stovetop on the top for cooking purposes, for possibilities of light cooking. The material that is being used in the stove is cast iron, and it produces a heat output of 5 kilowatt, which is accurate for the calculation. It also has the availability of back and top fixing chimney options and comes with a vertical shelf below the stove for storage of wood. For the pellet stove, we were looking into a company called Solo Stove. Now, Solo Stove is a company based in the United States, and they have paired up with World Vision. World Vision is a humanitarian organization who are currently engaged in responding with assistance in Ukraine, Romania, as well as Moldova. These camp stoves from the company Solo Stove will be shipped to World Vision, and World Vision will further deliver it to different refugee stations bordering Ukraine. The stove that they are planning to ship to Ukraine is the Titan Camp stove. This is a suitable pellet stove for a place where portability is essential. It is large enough to cook a meal, make coffee, or even boil water. And it can give sufficient radiant heat when in an enclosed space. Apart from the stove, the company also sells wooden pellets. Wooden pellets are basically biofuels made from compressed wood fiber. The advantages of using these will be clean burning, they produce high heat, and they are eco-friendly. Can you, one more, please.
So thank you so much, Nandini. Regarding our ventilation system, we made sure that all our devices are available in Ukraine because of the necessity of the ventilation, as I mentioned before. We will be using carbon monoxide smoke detector to keep monitoring the CO level inside the cabin, because it can be very dangerous if the CO concentration become higher than 100 ppm. Also, we will be using a wall-mounted fan to keep recirculating the air inside the cabin. Recirculating the air will help to have a uniform temperature distribution. And finally, we will be using 2 exhaust fans to keep mixing the air inside the cabin with the outside air. Mixing the air will keep providing the cabin with the fresh air. So that was our first solution. Our second solution will be the permanent solution. In the case of the permanent solution, the project will have an access to a power grid source. In this case, the power consumption won't be a challenge. So we recommend to have a full HVAC system. A mini split system will be an ideal for our project, as this system can provide heating and cooling. We recommend to use a console split system because it's very easy to install and it doesn't need to be hanged on the wall. As you can see in the figure on the right, this system operates on a wide range. Its cooling mode can work when the external temperature as low as -15 Celsius and as high as 43 Celsius. And the heating mode can work when the external temperature as low as -22 Celsius and as high as 24 Celsius. As you can see on the figure on the left, this system consists of 2 components. One would be outside the cabin, which has the green logo on it, and the other one will be inside the cabin. In the cooling mode, of course, the unit inside the cabin will remove the heat from the cabin and drop it outside using the external unit. In the heating mode, the cycle will be reversed. And what I mean with reversing the cycle, it's reversing the flow direction of the refrigerant inside the system using valves. Reversing the direction of the refrigerant will allow the external unit to work as a heat pump and remove the heat from outside and drop it inside the cabin. So finally, we will talk about the proposed new technology, and it had been mentioned before in this presentation, which is the micro combined heat and power system. This technology can, of course, offer it can offer power and provide heat at the same time. It is exactly like a small power plant using a cogeneration cycle. This technology uses neutral gas or propane to run the heat engine. The primary objective of the heat engine is to generate power, but while running the engine, we will have a secondary product, which is heat. As you can see on the left figure, this generated heat can be used to heat the water by the built-in heat exchanger inside the device. This heated water can be saved in a buffer tank for heat storage. This system and the buffer tank will be stored in the proposed accessory building. This hot water can be used, of course, as a source of the needed hot water for each cabin. Also can be used as a heating source for the cabin by using a hydronic radiator. As you can see on the figure on the right, we will need a big radiator to provide the required heat, which is around 5 kilowatt of heat. Before I hand the slides to Frank, I will have a pause for your questions.
Or at this point, any questions in general. And, we'll leave an email address along with the presentation and a hard copy of the presentation should questions come up after our delivery. But, to reiterate, that's sort of the magic of the micro turbine, is that the waste product is hot water, which could be pumped and stored into a traditional water heater, or pumped and used as hot water, and or used in a traditional radiator, as you see here. So it's micro turbine and block scale development sort of is the next thing. And that's a thing to consider. When a society is forced to redevelop, there's always that opportunity for innovation and improvement, which can translate to a more sustainable community, a better sense of community, and a more resilient community, which, and when at the end of the day, that will be the opportunity that Ukraine has when this conflict is behind them.
Frank, this is Mike
yes.
Burek. There was a question earlier from Jennifer Butler going back to the wall panels.
Yes.
She asks, could several layers of plexiglass have enough strength to hold a panel together instead of insulation, sandwich boards, and siding without compromising overall structure?
Derek, do you want to take a first whack at that?
It should definitely have the structural integrity to do it. My only concern with that would be the siding. On the image I have for the materials, it's clear, but the siding that we were planning on using wouldn't be clear, because then that would kind of give it a cheaper feel, almost look like a greenhouse. So it wouldn't be as transparent as you think. So then you would actually have to cut into that siding to add the opening for the light to come through.
And plexiglass really isn't a structural element either. It's quite brittle, and while it's not as dangerous as glass, it's still it will still shatter. It will still it's a good solution for it could be a solution for a window that's fabricated on site that could be assembled as a window in the wall cavity.
Right.
So
I think a solution would be to basically create some kind of window panel that can be installed that we can send with that if they order, 2 windows per unit that will fit perfectly in that slot. And it'll be wide enough to incorporate the fact that the insulation makes the walls pretty wide. So like a standard window frame won't actually fit. It'll be too thin. So basically some kind of pre-built window system that could be put into that unit, I think would be the optimal solution.
Frank, that's all the questions I see in chat.
Thank you, Mike. Well, I asked the class to consider themselves consultants to the U.S. Ukrainian Foundation. That
Well,
this
thank you.
is,
Wow.
yeah, that this is, it's bigger than a class project or a case study, and they took that request to heart, as you might see. They took a deep dive, and while I offered guidance, what you see here today is a result of the class's hard work and investment towards a cause that they believe in deeply. I'm proud of them, and know that they are all very happy to contribute. And we hope that the information delivered might prove to be a viable solution. And here's a snapshot of everyone. I think what we would add to this slide is my email address at Georgia Tech, so that after the fact, if anybody wanted to be in touch about moving forward with a project, they could just contact me directly.
Did I miss a discussion about costs? What kind of range are we thinking about? I mean, I know you've got so many variables.
There are a lot of variables, and while budget is always a consideration in this class, and this class always partners with a nonprofit of some sort, it's usually about affordable housing or low-income housing. So it's usually trying to accomplish a build that is for someone that might live at 60 or 80% of United States average median income. We had less of an emphasis on budget, while we found viable components that were not outrageously priced, especially when considering energy production. It was a little bit too much of a wild card as far as shipping and overall what would workforce be like, what would material costs be, that we did not consider costs. We were looking at what is fast and viable more than cost effective. But that could be a next step, Nadia. We'd be happy.
Yeah, I think so. I was very interesting that you had included the very beginning your interaction with Vlad. And building on that, I think, Frank, as I've discussed, we've been working with Ukraine cities since 1997. And so, I think we should look to possibly having some sort of focus groups, maybe with some of the mayors, and get some additional input. But I'm very committed that we, use all of this hard work to move the needle on Ukraine being able to choose some solutions, more immediate solutions for recovery. So I look forward to us, continuing to work and showcase this work that's been done. And yes, we need to do windows. You were talking about houses facing, the green area and children being able to play. Well, I think having windows where, you could look out and see, I think would add to the quality of life. So, but that's, there'll be a lot of, I guess, tweaks that we might think about as we have further discussions with people in Ukraine. So
I think another simple solution for windows would be to put a door that is basically a glass door. And that would give at least one big point of natural light to come in.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, but like the other components, we'll find a prefabricated window that will fit within the rough openings of the unit, and add that as another component to the wall assembly. And that actually was a topic of conversation. I feel like I might have steered Derek in the wrong direction. So that's on me. Yeah.
I guess, you mentioned a community in Atlanta that is utilizing some of what you were presenting today. Was that I guess, in terms of energy generation?
Yes,
Yeah.
Go ahead, Derek.
No,
sorry.
Go ahead, Frank.
Yeah, I was going to say there's a brownfield development that was developed probably 20 years ago now, that it was a brownfield, it was a train depot, so it had to be elevated above the soil. There were lots of considerations that had to be considered when developing on this land, one of which was overall energy capacity in the area. So they did include combined heat and power on that development, which is, basically right at the meeting of Midtown and downtown in Atlanta. So it's an urban environment that was able to introduce that technology. So I think the point is that it is here and now technology, and that it's something that should be considered in any new development, truly, when considering a city scale.
Yeah, and obviously this was not part of your class assignment, but unfortunately, Ukraine, the cities used to have all of those Soviet style, monstrosity of, apartment buildings. And so I know that, there's going to be people going to be looking at how to replace that housing, right? And with something that's a little bit more, if you want to say family friendly or, or energy friendly, or just, better situations. So some of the things that you've discussed would be applicable for urban areas, I guess, too. So
it would be, and we were going down that same path and looking at the current development and what it could become. And so really happy with what everybody was able to deliver, and your willingness to participate with us, Nadia.
Oh,
you and the foundation, and this can be the beginning of the journey in the relationship instead of the end. So please stay in touch.
Oh, listen, I'm looking forward to having a demonstration project in Ukraine.
Well, I think Bob is charged with that. I think he was going to be taking a trip over to look for manufacturer in Poland.
Yeah, but I think, I understood why you were, talking about doing it in Western Ukraine. When we've done pilot projects, we've always thought it was important to do more than one location, because it's not a true test, because there could be all sorts of circumstances that, would be just relevant to that one location. So we always used to try to do 2 or 3 different pilot projects. So anyway, so Bob, I guess you and I have to have a conversation on this. Again, thank you so very much for this hard work. And yes, this is just the beginning. And I look forward to our next discussion with you all. Thank you.
Thank you, Nadia.
Thank you.
Excellent job.
Thank you.